Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
You bet.
Tell you a quick funny story. I was chatting with Andy, our engineer, and it was just a couple minutes ago. And I said, so do you have Dr. Shealy? He said, not yet. I said, well, let me give you his number. And so I said, let me give you the clinic number. So he called, and someone answered the phone, and he said, is Dr. Shealy there? Yeah, but he's getting ready to do a radio show. I said, well, yeah, that's what I'm calling.
Good.
Oh, geez. So, class, if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. This is USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. I'm Vincent Finelli. And, Dr. Shealy, it was really great to see you this weekend. It was
mutual, of course. We don't do enough of that.
And that's what I was thinking, and I was thinking that we need to have another get together here at the farm where we have instructors and friends. Wouldn't that be nice? And we do it sometimes for Christmas. We have friends and family over for Christmas, and sometimes Easter and Thanksgiving. But what about just because we want to? What about just no reason at all? I mean, it's
well. Remember, Vince, the second most important thing in longevity and health is a network of friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's second only to being conscientious.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's what we need to do more often. And I was thinking back to the 1950s, and the grandparents were the glue. The grandparents were the glue for the GLUE for the family, because that's when we had the backyard picnics. I think they were called picnics, but the family would get together and you'd see the aunts and the uncles and the cousins, and everybody was there, and it was on like probably a Saturday usually, and you just sit under the tree in the shade, and it was just a great time where everybody got together, and a couple times during the summer, and I really fondly remember those. And then it became Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving at the grandparents' house, and when the grandparents died, it kind of stopped. Is that the way it was?
And we had what we call family reunions, where aunts, uncles, cousins all joined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I would call that the picnic, the family picnic in the backyard.
Yeah.
And our son has a lady friend. He's been seeing her for, I guess, 4 years now. And those guys do it right. They get together about once a week. And really, they get together for, lunch over at one of their houses, and the whole family goes. And it's like the nicest thing. And sometimes they invite us. Actually, we're invited all the time, but sometimes they specifically say, hey, you guys need to come. And it really is the nicest thing. They all get together and they chat and they update each other on what's happening. I think, class, we need to do that more often. We need to take a page out of the book of our son's lady friend's family and get together. Doesn't have to be once a week. Sure would be nice if it were. But and I don't have family really close to here, so it's difficult for us. Everybody'd have to either hop on just rent a bus or hop on planes. Yeah. So it's not likely to happen too frequently. But I wanted to mention that it was great having you out here, and we really need to do it more often.
Well, Vince, what you brought up is related to health. I've had this recent urge the last month to write a book on conscientiousness. But conscientious is a broad term. It's not just organized and responsible. It includes everything about your life. And I would like to share with you what I call Norm's conscientiousness chart. It's different from the standard one. So I ask people just two questions. Mm-hmm. On a scale of 0 to 100, how organized are you? On a scale of 0 to 100, how responsible are you? Those are the two big ones for me, organization and responsibility. Now, then I ask, do you have a body mass index of 18 to 24? If it's above 24, you subtract 10 points from each of your previous scores. Do you smoke? If the answer is yes, you subtract another 10 points from both of your scores. Do you eat at least 5 servings of vegetables and fruits daily? If the answer is no, you subtract another 10 points from both of the top scores. Do you exercise at least 30 minutes 5 or more days a week? If the answer is no, another 10 points off your top 2 scores. Do you sleep 7 or 8 hours each night? Again, if no, you subtract another 10 points off your score up above. Because in addition to being conscientious, you must have those health habits in order to be optimally healthy. And it's critically important.
Dr. Shealy, I was writing this down, and so 0 to 100, organized. How organized are you? Then 0 to 100, responsibility. Then body mass index between 18 and 24, and it's above that. What do you do? Minus 10? Did you say?
Yes.
If you're for how much above? Is it
any amount above?
Okay, minus
now,
10.
The higher it is, obviously, the worse it is. Probably ought to take 20 points off if you're 30 or above.
Okay, and then if you smoke, it's minus 10. 5. If you don't eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day, minus 10. Exercise 5 days a week, minus 10 if you don't do that. And then if you don't sleep 7 to 8 hours, minus 10. So I can see 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I can see people running like a minus score, Dr. Shealy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, what we don't know, in general, we know that you need to, on the very elaborate NEO5 factors testing scales, like 250 questions, you come out with a percentage of conscientiousness. And my percentage ranges, when I take the test, from 90 to 98% of conscientious. Mm-hmm. But if you're above 50%, at least you are better off than those below 50%. Because those people who don't have a minimum of 50+% of conscientiousness are going to have a shorter life expectancy. They're going to be unhealthy. They're going to be, more difficult to work with. They have more trouble throughout life. They're more likely to commit suicide, and on it goes. In other words, you can't afford the luxury of being unconscientious.
Well, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me.
Well, and I knew I could discuss it with you. I can't discuss it with some people.
Dr. Shealy, but some things I'm like my desk. My desk can tend to get cluttered. Now I know where everything is, but if someone were to look at it, they'd say, "How can you find anything?" Well, I can find it because it's right here.
I don't think that counts. Your desk is your private organization. And to me, I know where everything is on my desk, but it's cluttered. Mm-hmm. But remember, Einstein had a very cluttered desk.
Well, and that's what I was thinking of. If I were to describe my desk, I would say, if Mrs. Finelli doesn't come by, it would be like Einstein's desk or like Andy Rooney's desk. And they would show his office on 60 Minutes when he had his show on 60 Minutes. And when I used to watch television, and it was pretty cluttered. Now, I was no competitor to Andy Rooney and his office organization skills, but I was working on it. And I would file things on the floor. So, for example, if I'm on the air and I don't have enough room to file the things, I might just place a notebook on the floor and another one next to it, another one next to it. And then, I'd pick them up, but that's what I would do. And I've seen other people do that too.
Oh, of course. Now, fortunately, I have two little file things that go up. Each of them has 6 slots on it, one on either side of my desk, so I can put lots of extra stuff. I mean, if I had to put all that stuff on my desk, I couldn't get to my desk.
Right.
I mean, I've got a 4-foot-high file cabinet, essentially open file drawer on both sides of my desk, so I can file extra things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't do that now. I did have 2 filing cabinets and a very large table in the previous studio, which was in another part of the house. Now I'm in the dining room, and the dining room has a 9-foot-long harvest table, and so and there's a bench to go with it, almost like a church pew in size on the other side of the table, and so I've got lots of room, but I don't have any file cabinets in here because it just wouldn't go in terms of style.
Right. The family has to use the dining room sometimes.
Well, yeah, but it only holds maybe 4 people now. So I had a question for you, and it relates to doctors and travel. I remember back in the 1950s and the 1960s, I would see license plates that would have the letters MD for medical doctor on them. And it was kind of a neat thing. It was you could call it a status symbol, but when a doctor would pull into a hospital, there was special parking for doctors only, so if there's an emergency, the doctor could show up quickly with his vehicle and park right out front because it was MDs only, and it made a lot of sense to me. I mean, why not? And I don't think I've seen a MD-type license plate designating a medical doctor owning that vehicle. I don't think I've seen that in 3 decades.
Oh, I agree.
And when we come back, would you share with us what your thoughts? What happened? Did the states stop issuing them? Is it something that maybe they were carrying in their cars that was valuable to be stolen? What was it? What happened to the medical doctor's designation on license plates? Dr. Norm Shealy and I will be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, medical doctor. NormShealy.com, NormShealy.com. Dr. Shealy, what happened to the MD license plates?
I have a feeling that part of it is that physicians no longer do anything other than work for hospitals. 90% or more of physicians are slave employees of the hospital mafia. And only people who work in the emergency ward might be allowed to have special parking. I don't know.
Okay, very good. But it used to be neat. I would see a license plate with MD on it, and I'd say, "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, look at that. There's a doctor." And that was kind of a neat thing. And so, what happened to house calls? I remember a house call, Dr. Shealy, back in the early 1960s.
Our family doctor, when I was growing up, our family doctor was a family friend. In fact, in World War II, when he couldn't find a train set for his 5-year-old son, I gave him mine. I was, 12 or 13 by then. I gave him my train set so his son would have one because they weren't available.
Yeah, very kind of you. I was at a militaria convention, and this was a kind of a convention that had all kinds of artifacts from the War of Northern Aggression, the World War I, World War II, Korean conflict, the Vietnam conflict, lots of artifacts, and there was this one kind of off-topic artifact, unless it were an artifact from World War II, possibly just before that, and it was a black bag, and it was a doctor's bag. And it was the kind of bag that you would see a doctor carry, on a house call. It was a black leather bag, and it had some surgical instruments in it. It had some potions in small vials, and some syringes. And it was for sale as an artifact or historical item. I don't see them anymore either, Dr. Shealy.
Well, all of that's true. Again, physicians have become as equal to the janitors in prestige in hospitals today.
Wow, that's terrible. I mean, I really look up to you, and I have a couple other MD friends, and I look up to them. But I guess I understand what you're saying in terms of they are part of the machine, and they're not the individuals that we used to distinguish as individuals who are just exceptional in what they did. I guess that's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to agree with that. They're employees now, or many of them are employees, rather than being principled medical doctors. I was reading an article that's kind of interesting, and it kind of piqued my interest because I will go out in the woods and I'll get a couple ticks on me. Our son will get it's like a tick magnet. Mrs. Finelli is like a tick magnet, and she'll be, is that a tick on my back? And so she'll have lots of them. I might have one, if any, and our son gets them just like his mom does. And I was reading this article on dailymail.co.uk, and it says why your blood group determines whether you will be attacked by ticks. Scientists warn those with type A are walking targets for the bugs that cause Lyme's disease.
And
so
guess who's
what they did was a test.
Guess who's type A?
You.
Yes.
Are you type A? Yeah.
I am,
so,
and
I've
only had 6 or 8 ticks this year.
Wow. Is that few for you, or is that a lot?
Me, out of my garden, yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'll tell you a little bit more about this study, how they conducted it, and what they found, and the blood type that ticks prefer more often. When we come back, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. So we're talking about Lyme's disease with Dr. Norm Shealy. And what happened was there were some researchers, and they got some blood samples. Looking for that spot. Okay, so what they did was they got some tiny samples of blood from type A, B, AB, and O. So it's A, B, and O. And they put these droplets of blood on a sterile layer of filter paper on a petri dish in the lab. And then they got a sheep tick, and they placed the sheep tick on the filter paper, and they tracked its movement for 2 minutes. And they looked to see what the sheep tick would do. And the analysis of the results was that the ticks preferred type A blood in a majority of the cases. 36% of the time they chose.
Oh dear. Okay. Each your own, huh?
So 36% of the time they chose type A, and I'm wondering if they can sense that, the ticks can sense that blood type. If this is really true, true science, if they can sense that through the skin, what type blood you are, and maybe they just, maybe it tastes better. I really don't know why they would do this, but they seem to like type A.
Well, I don't either,
so,
but I know that I'm prone to ticks. However, knocking wood, I haven't had Lyme disease.
Well, okay. And so what is Lyme's disease? According to this article, it's caused by a bacteria that's transmitted to humans through the bite of an infected black-legged tick. And it says that the most common symptoms of this disease are fever, headache, fatigue, skin rash, and migraines. And so typically it's treated with a course of oral antibiotics for several weeks. And but if untreated, the infection can spread to the joints, the heart, the nervous system, and can be deadly, according to the article. Do you agree with that, Dr. Shealy?
Oh, absolutely. Mainly, we see people with chronic Lyme, which is devastating. It causes the whole electrical system of the brain and body to be short-circuited. I call it electromagnetic dysthymia, and it really requires 20 shots of magnesium with vitamin C IV.
Okay. Well, I know a gal. I've known her for most of my life, and she lives on the East Coast, and actually she's a relative. Okay, so a family relative, and I've invited her and her family and her children to come on out to the farm. From the East Coast. They won't come. They won't come because we have ticks out here, and she was bitten by a tick, got Lyme's disease. Oh, it's terrible. It's exactly what you said. It's probably one of the worst cases of what you were describing, because early on when she got Lyme's disease, she's a mom, and she would get in her car and go shopping with the children, and then forget how to drive the car, or forget how to get home, or forget where she was and how to get home, and fall down the stairs and lose coordination. I mean, it was absolutely devastating. And at the time, we're talking about like a 30-year-old who absolutely had was medically dysfunctional, not because of something that she did, but because of Lyme's disease. And it was really serious, really, really serious. And they put her on antibiotics, and then ultimately she had an antibiotic machine that would give her continual doses of antibiotics, and that ultimately fixed it. But it was terrifying to her, and it was very alarming to the family. And it was all from a tick bite. Have you heard of anything like that, Dr. Shealy? I mean, I know
yes,
this
indeed.
woman.
Yes, indeed. And if it's not treated, if it's treated with antibiotics in the acute stage, then it's often cured. But if it's not treated with antibiotics, then antibiotics will not do much for you afterwards when it becomes chronic. There's a guy here locally who treats people for a year with antibiotics, but I've never seen anybody cured if it's been several months since the onset. Mm-hmm. But with 20 shots of
Dr. Shealy,
vitamin C, 20 shots of IV vitamin C can cure it.
Okay, when you say shots, are you talking about like a 500 ml IV drip? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. That's what's necessary to treat the chronic disease.
Okay. And Dr. Shealy, I sent you an article that was sent to me by Joey, USA Preparedness instructor, about it looks like the medical village is going to clamp down on Myers cocktails, intravenous IV, those kinds of things. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that they can actually do that?
Well, what do you expect for something that's controlled by the pharmacomafia? The FDA is actually a subdivision of the pharmacomafia. I wouldn't trust them to tell me the time of day.
Okay. Well, do you think there'll be a shortage based on how would they, using your expertise, Dr. Shealy, how would they limit the amount of
right now they're limiting IV bags, just the bags you put it in. The saline or 5% dextrose, it's hard to get, increasingly difficult. And many of the subcomponents, like the vitamin C itself, are harder and harder to get. We've been having trouble for a year already keeping adequate stock.
And what do the suppliers say when your office places an order for the vitamin C or the IV bags or the equipment that's used for the Myers cocktail or the treatment that we're talking about that you're recommending? What do they say? How do they say we don't have any? I mean, what do they? How do they explain?
Back ordered. It'll be 6 weeks till we can deliver, that kind of thing.
6 weeks, Dr. Shealy. This this is, I would think, relatively common. IV bags, I would think, would be relatively common. We're not fighting a war, are we? That's been declared.
We're fighting a war with the pharmacomafia.
Yeah.
It's as big a war as any
what I'm saying is, it's not like World War I or World War II, where there are guys that are being shot, maimed, wounded, and on the battlefield. We don't really have that going on per se, and we've got conflicts. But how, with our technology and machinery, how could we run out of IV bags and IV solution and vitamin C? How is that possible?
Because we're
talking about ascorbic acid.
Because the FDA is a sidearm of the pharmacomafia. They're owned by the pharmaceutical industry. Well, it's believable. Look, it's no different from everything else. Look, our Justice Department, our Injustice Department, recently approved the merger of the two most dangerous companies, evil companies, in the history of the world, Bayer and Monsanto. Now, to me, everything in our entire government, from the top down, is part of the problem. They're not part of the answer, they're part of the problem. How could the Justice Department allow the merger of Monsanto, which produces more poison, Roundup, and genetically modified crap than any other company in the world, and Bayer, which was the financial arm behind Hitler, are now one, thanks to your Congress and Injustice Department. It's all the same. It's crooked from the top down.
Yeah, I think you have to be a special breed of defective to be a politician. I think you really do.
You're being kind. I think you have to have a criminal personality.
Dr. Shealy, when I think of our family's friends, none of them, not one, is a politician. Not one. Not one. Because I've seen some up close. I've seen how they can turn on and turn off a smile as if it's a light switch. I see how they lie, they cheat, they steal. And then at the same time, they have these compacts with their spouses. So let's say the guy is the politician and he's married. They have this rule, this agreement, this contract that they will not get divorced. And I believe the reason they do that is not because they love each other. It's because then the wife can testify against the husband. And if you think about it, Bill and Hillary, they sleep in separate states.
They happen to be equal criminals as far as I can tell.
Yes. And I believe that they stay married so that they won't be able to be forced to testify against each other.
Exactly, I agree.
Cannot be forced to testify against his wife and vice versa. So I think that's why they do it. And I know a politician who told me that he and his wife had this agreement that they will stay married no matter what. No matter what. And I really believe that it's not out of love, it's out of preservation. Because if these guys were sent to prison for their crimes, they would find it really rough inside the institution that they protect. Yep. Okay. I've got a whole bunch of questions when we come back, and one of them is, got some tomatoes growing, I'm all excited, they're just about ripe. Question is, can I overdose on tomatoes? When we come back with Dr. Norm Shealy. So Dr. Shealy, you're out in the garden and you're planting. I guess your tomatoes are starting to come in, is that right?
You bet. I've been eating tomatoes for the last week.
Wow, you're ahead of us. Well, let me ask you, I love tomatoes, and my dad loved tomatoes, so I probably can't help it. Do you, and what he would do is he would just take a tomato and he would wash it, and he'd slice it, and he'd put a little bit of salt on it, just a small amount of salt in the summer, and he would just love tomatoes. and I do as well. So pink salt on tomatoes, and I love making a salad, cucumbers and some extra virgin olive oil, some vinegar, and a little bit of salt, and pink salt, and a little bit of pepper, and it's great. Well, and some cottage cheese too. Can I overdose on tomatoes?
I doubt it. I mean, remember,
Okay.
you need a minimum of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 5 servings of tomatoes a day, I wouldn't think that was excessive. That still gives you room for a few others.
All right. So if a person goes to McDonald's and has just a hamburger, 5 hamburgers a day, with each one with a pickle or 2, does that count as 5 servings of vegetables?
No, not even 1. It counts as 5 servings of poison.
I was visiting an elementary school, and had lunch with the principal, and we went through the school lunch line, and we sat in the cafeteria with all the students, and he said, Vincent, this packet of ketchup, that's considered a vegetable. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, I would say he is beyond the most stupid people I know.
Well, what he was referring to is the government considers that a vegetable.
Well,
so when your children go to the public training camp class and they get servings of healthy meals, as they allege, that packet of ketchup is considered a vegetable.
Well, first of all, you'd have to eat about 6 packets to be a serving.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's plastic lined, so that's good for you.
Right.
Okay. So the good news is I will probably not be able to overdose on tomatoes. That's a really good news.
That's almost certainly true. Tomatoes have many, many, many different vitamin A forms in it. The lycopene is one of the best, among others, but they're great, delightful fruit, really.
Do you have a favorite tomato? Is there one that you like the best?
Yes, Jet Star.
Yep. Okay. We've planted Jet Star this year, and of course the Rutgers tomato. And years in the past, we've had I think it's called Mr. Stripey, so it's a striped,
right,
kind of a white and red tomato, just for our own amusement to see what they'd be like. And then some purple tomatoes, literally purple in color. Have you tried those?
I haven't tried the purple ones, but they would have more antioxidants. The
well, that's what I was.
The fruit or vegetable, the more antioxidants.
Okay, so can you tell us exactly how that works? So if I'm in the store and I'm looking at lettuce, and the last time I bought lettuce, I did not get dark lettuce because I was concerned about the E. coli problem, and there were some other recalls of different kinds of lettuce. So I was really kind of careful where it came from, and so I didn't buy the dark, purpley leaved lettuce or the romaine hearts. I just bought just a plain lettuce, and it's certainly not the best for us. But what are your thoughts on when you want to buy lettuce? What do we look for? What's the obvious thing to look for?
Homegrown.
Yeah, homegrown. I've got to agree with that. And okay, so class, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back from the other side of the break. But in terms of colors of foods that we should eat, natural foods, my recommendation is keep the garden right outside the back door. So many people put their garden in the corner of the property, and so it's out of the way. And because it's out of the way, it's out of the way. Out of the way. Too far to tend, too far to go get the results of your gardening. So right outside the back door where we have ours. Dr. Shealy and I will be right back. We'll talk about colors when we get back. And the antioxidants. So this applies to your garden as well as if you are in the supermarket, in the grocery aisle. Dr. Shealy, what do you recommend in terms of color for salad greens, if you will, or lettuces?
Well, again, let's face it, all of the leafy vegetables are among the best of all the veggies. period.
Okay.
Even, pure greens like spinach, kale, chard, Chinese cabbage, all of those are at the top of the list because they're loaded with vitamins, especially vitamin K2, but they're all good. Now, the leaf lettuce or the romaine, etc., with the purple in it, has a few more antioxidants. But, I think you need at least 1 or 2 servings a day of some kind of green veggie. Now, I've never actually looked up the difference between, let's say, green beans and green bell peppers versus lettuce, but I think they're somewhat comparable.
Okay, so are we looking for chlorophyll? Is that one of the things that we're looking for?
No, not chlorophyll. You're looking more for vitamin K2 and some other antioxidant type things. But basically, the vitamin K2 is one of the most important because it helps to keep your blood from clotting. It helps your blood to clot when you get caught or accidental or whatever.
All right. Well, and that brings me to my next question. I have a jar of Dr. Shealy's Eco Green Iron-Free Essentials, and and thank you very much. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was, my mom would listen to a guy by the name of Carlton Fredericks on the radio back in probably the 1960s, maybe even just before that. And he did a radio broadcast about health and nutrition, and my mom was very interested in health and nutrition. So while the other children growing up would have all kinds of fun things to eat, we had healthy things to eat. And well, if she cooked broccoli, she would save the water from cooking broccoli and put it in the refrigerator, and that'd be a beverage in our house.
Well, she's smart.
Not too many people would do that, right? But that's what she did. And so one of the things that you have in your Dr. Shealy's Essentials is riboflavin. Now, that was something that I would hear on the radio as a child. Can you tell us what riboflavin is and why it's important?
Well, it's one of the B complexes. And actually, the basic Bs, B1, B2, B3, B4, B6, are absolutely crucial for your brain, your nervous system. They have other benefits, but the place where they are most crucial is for just plain old simple memory and brightness and happiness and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And niacin, you've got niacin, and I would hear that being discussed as well. Can you tell us what niacin is?
Well, niacin is vitamin B3, and it is particularly good actually for helping your cholesterol go down or lower, but it's also very anti-inflammatory. It's very good for arthritis, for instance.
Okay. Then you have in here iodine from kelp, 75 micrograms. Is that enough iodine, or should we supplement?
No, actually, that would be about half the absolute essential daily intake. Now, once upon a time, 50 micrograms a day was enough. But now, because of the total stress and all kinds of other poisons in the air, what we studied this about 20 years ago, and even back in the mid-90s, it seemed that you needed about 150 micrograms a day, ideally.
Okay. And also in your supplement is selenium. And I remember my wife's grandmother talking about the importance of selenium. Gotta have it. And you've got 25 micrograms in your Dr. Shealy's Essentials as well. Can you address that?
Well, it's absolutely critical for immune function. That's its number one benefit, immune.
Mm-hmm. Right. So when I was growing up, we had copper pipes. And the hot water, the cold water, even the drains were copper pipes. And I guess copper became so expensive that houses that were made probably starting in the late 60s were doing away with copper. And before that class, the plumbing was galvanized iron pipe. Okay? And then copper seemed to be better, seemed to flow better, it's easier to put together. We weren't so worried about the lead solder joining the copper. Now we are. But copper plumbing seemed to be the best way to go. And in your essentials, Dr. Shealy, you've got copper. What does copper do for us?
Well, copper is very important, again, for immune function and as a balance with zinc. In other words, we need about 5 times as much zinc as we have of copper, roughly. And your blank FDA took off the market one of the best copper products ever, copper asprinate. Copper asprinate will protect you from, or even treat peptic ulcers, whereas regular aspirin worsens peptic ulcers. So copper is very anti-inflammatory. It's very crucial to your overall immune and health in general, and many, many people are deficient in copper.
You know, as you were describing this, Dr. C, I was thinking about illnesses. Would you say that people generally are more sick today in 2018 as compared with maybe 1950, 1960? Are we more sick?
Even compared to 1970, absolutely. And there are 3 reasons for that. Number 1 is pollution. Number 2 is the food supply is worse than ever. And number 3 is people have been seduced, if you will, by the so-called fast food, which I'd call junk food industry.
Convenience. And I think you've hit the nail right on the head. I believe that we are not having meals the way we used to. And I remember going to Mrs. Finelli's house when we were dating, before we were married, and even after we were married. Her mother was just a fabulous, fabulous cook. And the dinner would always consist of a salad. It would always consist of some kind of meat. It could be chicken. It could be beef. There were vegetables. There were always vegetables. There was always a salad, and there was always meat. And it was a family dinner. Everybody sat around and ate together and, talked about the topics of the day, what they were doing, what they had done, what they, were going to do. It was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And I have a feeling that is not the case in most homes today. I have a feeling that,
and I bet you have frequently had fish on Friday.
Yeah.
And I bet you had liver once a month.
So how did you know? You're absolutely right. My mother loved liver.
Well, so did we. I mean, that was my family. And remember, I grew up 20 years or more before you did.
And we had these things that I thought were called little peppers. They weren't little peppers. They were chicken hearts.
Oh, yes. Of all the livers, chicken hearts and chicken livers are my favorite.
Yeah. We used to have that. And, gosh, I really think we were a lot healthier back then than we are now. And, the meals were a big thing. Now it seems like it was a big thing because it was a time to be together as a family. Today, I think meals are, I'm in a hurry. I have to eat. It's a necessity. So let me slam down this extruded thing. Put it in the microwave oven, and I'll have that one thing along with some soda. And that now...
Now, by the way, I do not have a microwave oven. I don't like it. It damages the protein tremendously. You want to test it. Boil a cup of water in the microwave and boil a cup of water on the stove in a kettle. Let it sit to room temperature and taste the difference. The water boiled in the microwave tastes awful. I don't even boil water in it, let alone cook any food. Well, I don't have one.
Yeah. Well, we have a microwave oven in our kitchen, And the reason that I bought a microwave oven is because when we were designing the kitchen, I wanted to exhaust the kitchen cooking smells, odors, humidity outside. And we have a gas oven, and I wanted to vent that outside as well. So it was less expensive for me to buy a scratch and dent microwave oven with the exhaust fan built in than it was for me to buy an exhaust fan. I don't know. I can't explain it, but that's what we have, and it works fine as an exhaust fan. So above the propane stove, cook stove, is a microwave oven that has a fan and a light, and it can exhaust the, whatever we're cooking. So, and the last thing I want to do is pollute the inside of our house with whatever we're cooking on the stove. So just a thought. Dr. Shealy and I will be right back. Got a couple other questions about the ingredients in the Dr. Shealy's Essentials. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, and I'm asking him questions about Dr. Shealy's Essentials. And it's a supplement. There are 90 veg capsules in this container. And I'm asking about the ingredients as I read down the bottle. And another one is pantothenic acid, Dr. Shealy. I remember my mom buying that for me when I was very, very young. What is the benefit of pantothenic acid?
Well, it's good for your skin, and it's good for your hair. My mother swore that it kept your hair from turning gray to some extent, among other things. But it's part of the broad field of B complex, so it has many benefits.
And doesn't copper have an effect of preventing premature whitening of the hair as well?
Well, yes, but its single most important is to keep you from developing aneurysm. Aneurysms are weakness in the elastic tissue of your arteries anywhere in the body, but especially in the brain or the aorta, and a deficiency in copper can increase your risk of an aneurysm.
So a deficiency can increase the possibility of an aneurysm. So you've got to have copper. Simple as that, yes?
Exactly.
Okay. Another thing that you have as an ingredient is lipase, L-I-P-A-C-E. Or I think I said that right. L-I-P-A-S-E, excuse me.
Yeah, lipase. Well, that's a digestive enzyme to help you digest fat.
Okay. And amylase.
That helps you digest carbohydrate.
Okay. So it sounds like, Dr. Shealy, that this is a great way to go, all in one vegetable capsule. Is that right?
Well, I consider it one of the essentials for people in today's polluted world. Mm-hmm. Yes, you could get by with eating it in your fruits and vegetables 30 years ago. But today, because of the severe toxicity of our entire globe, I think everybody needs to take at least 25 milligrams a day of B complex. And so one a day will take care of. I take 2 a day because I figure 50 milligrams is ideal.
Okay. And all right. And Dr. Shealy, do you recommend that one take your Dr. Shealy's Essentials with food, without food, between meals, with meals? How do you recommend?
I don't know that it matters, Vince. I tend to take. I counted it this morning of the total number, or just individual number of pills. Mm-hmm. My beginning of the day is 109 tablets or capsules.
And you still have room for food.
Well, I remember my breakfast then is usually 2 hours later. Mm-hmm. When my breakfast, and this is like for the last 9 years, almost 8 years maybe, is about 50 to 60 grams of protein, mainly as whey protein isolate, but a few others that add up to that, with 6,000 antioxidant ORAC units in about 6 ounces of apple juice and lots of other antioxidants and stuff. And that's my breakfast. And I would say 60 to 70% of the time, I don't want any lunch even. It holds me until dinner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're really busy, with patients and so forth, yes?
Yeah, but, I had a nice lunch on Saturday that Sandy produced, of course, and I couldn't have resisted it. But often when I'm at home or at the office, I don't need lunch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I've got to have lunch. I'm, 1 o'clock, 1:30. I'm in the house looking for lunch. But I've got to tell you, I really like the summer because I get a chance to have various lettuces. I have onions. I love Vidalia onions in my salad, and tomatoes and cucumbers. And she makes a great cucumber salad.
Oh, yeah.
Put that on top of lettuce and a little cottage cheese with it, and I take some more of my vitamins. And so for me, I just love the summer from that perspective. When we come back, may we talk about surgery? I have a dear friend who had some brain surgery, had a tumor removed, and can we talk about do's and don'ts and how brain surgery actually works with Dr. Norman Shealy, medical doctor. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, we have a very dear friend who had some brain surgery. There was a tumor in her head, and they opened her up, and I had a chance to chat with her husband. He stopped over at the farm yesterday. And I said, so what'd they do? And he said, well, they cut this square out of her skull, or they cut her skin, peeled it back, cut a square out, and then they glued that square back in after the surgery. Is that typically what's done, using glue to put the opening back in place?
Well, it may be. In the old days when I was doing brain surgery, no, we just put it back in place, and you could hold it in place with a stainless steel wire if necessary. But sometimes, considering the way you cut it, maybe you just had to tie it down.
Mm-hmm. So are you talking about, like, if I were to make a patch, for example, we have a very heavy skirt that is used on our hay mower, and sometimes it gets holes in it. So what I'll do is I'll make a patch, and I'll drill a couple holes in the patch, and then I'll run some very heavy, suture material would be an example, through the holes, and is that what you're saying with the stainless steel wire?
Yes,
keep it in place, and
it depends on the way in which it's been cut, because bone, you've got to saw through it in a sense, but basically it can be put back in way back in the late 50s when I was in training. I had a man who got his head caught between the wharf and a great big fishing boat, and his head was about twice normal size. And I had to take off the entire top of his skull all the way around to save his life because his brain was so swollen. And we put the bone in the freezer, and 3 months later I was able to put it back on, and he was fine. His only awesome. Deficit was loss of smell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, unbelievable. And so does if a section of the skull is taken out, does it knit back together? Does the body say, "Oh, I know where this goes. I'll just knit it back together"?
No, it will not heal without putting bone back.
Yeah, no, I know, but I mean, if you do put the bone back, it will knit back together.
Oh, yeah. The bone. I mean, the skin will always have a scar on it, but as far as the skull is concerned, you won't even be able to see it after 6 or 8 months.
Okay, and when someone has brain surgery or a tumor surgery, why is it that we hear so often, we got most of it out? Most. Sometimes you hear we believe we got all of it.
Well, it depends. Now, if this was a tumor growing on the outside of the brain, the chances are you can remove all of that. If it's a tumor in the brain substance itself, it's still possible in an adult to have a benign, if you will, non-cancerous, non-malignant tumor, but 90+% of all tumors growing in the brain are malignant. And it doesn't matter whether you got them all or not, because, you're talking about microscopic, and they grow back.
Is there a way to prevent them from growing back?
No. A malignant brain tumor is 99.9% of the time fatal.
Okay. And I was reading about an article about foods to avoid before surgery. And so can we talk about that? So let's say a person is going to have, I don't know, any kind of surgery. Are there foods that you recommend that a person not eat, and for what reasons?
Well, in general, I don't think there are many foods you have to avoid. You need to avoid certain supplements or things over the counter like aspirin to prevent blood clotting. But I don't know of many foods that I can be certain you should avoid.
Okay. So aspirin, the idea is you do not want to prevent blood clotting because otherwise a person might just have bleeding. Is that correct?
That is correct. There are many supplements that can increase the lack of blood clotting, which is, in normal, healthy people is a good thing. But when you have surgery, of course, many tiny blood vessels can't be seen adequately, and they're not bleeding really vigorously, so they can bleed post-operatively.
I'm trying to think of a common procedure. Okay, colonoscopy. If a person's having a colonoscopy, that's just kind of a look-see, but while they're in there, if they find a polyp, they cut out those polyps, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so if a person's going to have something like that,
it can be bruised, if you will. Even though you're in a colonoscopy, it sounds simple, but it's got to go around a curve or two, and even though it's a blunt object, it could bruise the tissue enough to cause bleeding in someone who's sensitive.
Is that why they recommend not having iron supplements prior to a colonoscopy? I believe it's iron.
I wasn't even aware of that. I don't remember being told that when I had my single colonoscopy. I don't know. Iron doesn't cause bleeding.
Okay. How about after surgery? If a person has had surgery, right after the surgery or when after the surgery, should a person begin taking supplements, and what kind of supplements?
Well, within 5 days, I think for most surgeries, you could take anything you were taking before. But I would not be, I wouldn't start back on them mostly within a few days.
Okay, 5 days. Okay. All right, very good. Let's see. When I was very, very young, I had a great field trip when I was in the public training camp. And I think the public training camps were different than they are today. We learned more about important things. And one of the things that I remember, and this was probably third grade, maybe even second grade, that our class went to Mount Vernon, Virginia. And we got a chance to see George Washington's mansion and plantation, first president of the United States. And what I remember about this was it was a big house and had this huge covered front porch, if you will. And I was linking that in my mind this morning to another house that I saw in Virginia, which was 2-story, and it had a lower front porch, and then it had an upper front porch. And the upper front porch was the entire width of the house, or length of the house, depending on how you look at it, along the front, and it was screened in. Now, I don't think George Washington had screens on his windows, but this particular one did. And I remember the person who owned this, and this was a couple decades ago when I was there, that they said, yeah, this was the sleeping porch, because it was so hot in the summers that people would sleep outside. That's before electricity, before window fans, before air conditioning. And so they would sleep outside. Well, what I did was I tried an experiment in our house. We have a 2-story house. And I shut the doors upstairs and opened the windows. And I prevented air conditioning from the first floor going to the second floor. So it was just open windows on the second floor. I wanted to see how hot it would get. And we have one of those thermostats. It's a digital thermostat, and it tells you outside temperature and inside temperature. It was between 92 and 94 degrees inside on the second floor with the windows open. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all this, Dr. Shealy, is if the power were to fail, and it has across the country during the extreme heat that we're having, if it's 92 to 94 degrees inside, how serious of a health risk are those temperatures, 92 to 94
it varies
degrees?
somewhat with your overall health. I mean, personally, in general, it would not bother me at all during the day, but I have to admit I don't sleep well at those temperatures. In fact, the only room in my house that is air conditioned is my bedroom. And I do like to keep the temperature down at about 70 degrees for sleep.
Okay. In our house, we air condition right now because it is so hot here in our neck of Missouri. The grass, we had rain. We had a half an inch of rain about a day ago, and we couldn't believe it. It was so wonderful. We're in a drought here. The grass is crunchy. Literally, if I were to take a mower, I would create dust. The grass blades are brown. They would turn to dust. And after that half inch of rain, I went out after it rained during the night. I went out during the day after a day of sunshine, and I just scratched with my foot the soil, and it was just dust. And so that rain, that half inch of rain, just disappeared. And it was very obvious to me how important rain is, how important water is, because the tomato plants, if I don't water them twice a day, they'll die. The fruit trees, if I don't water them every day or every other day, they will die. And they need a big drink of water. And of course, if we don't get water, we're going to die. And my question really relates to what kind of a temperature becomes really dangerous for people. And I've got to think that 94 degrees is getting close. It's getting close to being dangerous. And so that's my question for you when we come back. At what point can most people, up to what point can most people take the heat, and at what point does it become dangerous? And what do you do if the electricity fails and it's 94 degrees in your house and there's no fan running because there's no electricity? What do we do? We'll be right back. Dr. Shealy, just a quick comment. I really appreciate the extra effort that you go through when you package Dr. Shealy's essentials. And you've got the outer shrink wrap that you have to tear that off in order to get to the cap. Then you have to tear the seal off to open the cap. And then when you open the cap, you've got another seal. You've got 3 layers of security on your Dr. Shealy's essentials. And I want to tell you, I really appreciate all the extra effort that you go through to make that happen.
Well, it's sort of essential these days with all the stuff that's happened. Remember, this all started with my least favorite over-the-counter product, Tylenol. And when there was cyanide in the bottle, and it had been tampered with in the stores, and of course, almost all good manufacturers now put a couple of seals over things in order to prevent tampering it before it gets to the people.
Mm-hmm. And yours doesn't have a couple, it has 3. So I want to thank you. And you're absolutely right. There was a massive Tylenol scare. And if I remember correctly, someone bought a package of Tylenol, laced it with cyanide, put it back on the shelf, and then the panic ensued. And that was pretty scary. It made the news, all over the country for days and days and days. Absolutely. A massive recall. Unbelievable. But yeah, it absolutely did happen. So, Dr. Shealy, we know that about 104 degrees body temperatures when it really starts to get pretty dangerous. And so my question is, what kind of temperature outside, that the body is in? So, for example, room temperature or outside temperature if you're out working, or if you're trying to sleep and it's really hot at night, or you're inside the house and the electricity quits. There's no fan, there's no air conditioning, there's not much you can do. At what temperature do you think we need to be concerned?
Well, anything above 90, it can be a problem. Now, again, for me, who happens to love heat, I'm perfectly comfortable at 100 degrees, but not when I go to sleep. I don't sleep well when it's above 72.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We keep our house, the downstairs air conditioner set at about 80. We don't, for us, because we're in and out a lot and because we do a lot of things in the farmhouse, 80 degrees seems to be about where we're okay. And we're able to sleep at 80. Probably be more comfortable lower than that, but we're trying to do it as much off-grid as possible. And the air conditioning is a challenge for us to have off-grid air conditioning. It's just, we haven't figured out how to do it. So we're off-grid except for the air conditioning. So we keep it at about 80. And so what about hydration? Can we overdo it? Can we have too much water in these hot days?
The most important thing is you have to get up to empty your bladder if you drink too much in the evening. During the day, it's just a nuisance if you drink too much. It can actually wipe you out of certain essential nutrients, especially potassium, possibly magnesium, that kind of thing. And everything is relative. In general, what you need is roughly half your body weight. Say you weigh 160 pounds. Your water intake should be exactly half of that in ounces. That is 80 ounces.
Okay, so if a person weighs 160 pounds, they should have 80 ounces of water per day.
Right,
if you weigh
half your body weight in pounds in ounces of water, yes.
Okay, so a 200-pounder should drink 100 ounces of water per day, spread out throughout the day. What about watermelon? Can you eat too much watermelon? Because that seems to make...
I love watermelon, but to me, too much of that will cause diarrhea. So it is not only a diuretic, it speeds up gut as well as urine.
Okay. But we can have watermelon. It's still okay to have it, right?
Oh, yes. Lovely. Great food.
Dr. Shealy, thanks so much for being with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.